Close your eyes. Picture Maryland, the Chesapeake Bay, blue crabs, historic Baltimore, the Naval Academy. Now picture this, a 2-month-old baby decomposing in a crematory owner's living room while his parents mourn over someone else's ashes. A grandmother strapped to a chair and blown up by the military after her family said no to experiments and testing. Bodies stacked up like firewood, leaking fluids through cardboard boxes while flies swarm overhead. Welcome to Maryland's dark harvest, where bodies are currency and death is just another transaction. Tonight we're pulling back the curtain on a state where the mayor warns of vans snatching girls for their organs. 3,322 human trafficking victims have been identified and counting. A centuries-old body snatching tradition has evolved into a modern nightmare. This isn't fiction. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented fact, backed by criminal investigations, lawsuits, and newspaper headlines. Maryland has always been in the body business. In business? Well, business is booming, so buckle up because what you're about to hear will make you question every missing person report, every cremation certificate, every routine hospital discharge of an elderly patient. In Maryland, everyone's a potential product, and the harvest never ends. Hello, strangers. Welcome back to the Strange Bar and Grill. I'm your host, JP. Today's stories are something else. You're about to be mad or grossed out or maybe even both. And the final story of what they were doing to people on military bases alone had me shook. So make sure to listen to the end. Picture this, Chris Parham and LaQuanda Brown, clutching what they believed were the ashes of their 2-month-old son, Koiser. For months they mourned over that urn, talked to it, kept it safe. But those weren't their baby's ashes. And this isn't some mistaken ashes story either, like they gave 2 different families the wrong ashes. No, this is something else. One day, they received a call from police saying they discovered something horrifying. Their son was never actually cremated. Their infant son, dressed in the same clothes from his funeral, was discovered decomposing in the home of Rosa Turner and Brandon Williams, the owners of Heaven Bound Crematory in White Plains, Maryland. Not in the crematory, in their house, where they live. So let that sink in for a moment. A baby's body in someone's living space, rotting away. The family had paid Stewart Funeral Home in Washington, D.C. to handle their son's arrangements. They trusted the system. They believed when someone hands you an urn and says, "Here's your child," that it contains your child. But they were wrong. How did this happen and why? Well, Heaven Bound Crematory, they had quite the reputation. Back in 2017, the Maryland Death Services Oversight Board caught them improperly storing human remains. Did they learn their lesson? Hell no. By January of 2025, inspectors found a house of horrors. Bodies stacked up in cardboard boxes. The cremation chamber, broken, not working. It was just for show. Dried blood on the floors, some of it years old. Body fluids leaking through boxes. Ripped body bags with arms and legs hanging out. 3 bodies visibly decomposing. One had been there since a previous inspection. A refrigeration unit door blocked by boxes of human remains. 18 bodies stored above proper temperature. The stench was so bad, flies were pouring out of the boxes. Flies from human remains. Rosa Turner Williams had been on probation since 2017. She was fined, ordered to take ethics courses, work with a mentor. Did she comply? Of course not. She just kept stacking bodies and cashing checks. The state board eventually closed the crematorium down in January of 2025. Rosa and Brandon didn't receive any charges. Chris Parham and LaQuanda Brown filed a lawsuit seeking millions in damages from Heaven Bound for what they did to their child.
And we like, why was he in their home? So many other thoughts, like just rushing through our mind. Like, what were they trying to do? Like, what were they doing?
November 2019, Baltimore Mayor Jack Young stands before the cameras with a chilling warning. We're getting reports of somebody in a white van trying to snatch up young girls for human trafficking and selling their body parts. The police said they had no reports of actual incidents, but Mayor Young doubled down. It's all over Facebook. Now, this claim has been widely disproven by most. The police stated there's no actual proof of these abductions and body part harvesting stories that are being passed around on Facebook. But does that mean everyone's lying? Just because there's no police report doesn't mean it's not happening, right? How many girls go missing and are never reported? How many runaways become organ donors against their will? The mayor wasn't talking about Hollywood-style kidnappings. Modern traffickers are smarter. They prey on the vulnerable, the homeless, the addicted, the forgotten. They use psychological control, not chains. But let's go back real quick and let's talk about Maryland's history some, because Baltimore has been in the body business for over 150 years. In the 1800s, Baltimore became body snatching capital of America. Why, you might ask? 6 medical schools and not enough corpses to go around. The solution? Grave robbing became an industry. They called it resurrection. Digging up fresh graves, breaking open coffins, hooking bodies by the neck, hauling them out. They'd fold corpses into whiskey barrels for shipping. The destination? Medical schools as far as St. Louis and Atlanta. And get this, they'd sell the leftover whiskey as, quote, stiff drinks. So let that marinate in your head a little bit. The robbers had a system. Medical students that did the digging. Janitors supervised. Professors looked the other way. Politicians protected the trade. Police ignored it unless they were forced to act. Race played a role too. Black cemeteries? Easy targets. Potter's Fields for the poor? Open season. The asylum grounds at Bayview? Robbers would raid in broad daylight, even during board meetings. Johns Hopkins Medical School, when they opened in 1893, they had a janitor nicknamed King Bill, who kept a horse, carriage, picks, and shovels in the basement. His job? Securing a reliable supply of corpses. But let's fast forward back to today. Maryland is still harvesting bodies, but the methods have evolved. Maryland ranks 4th in the nation per capita for human trafficking cases. Think about that, 4th in the entire country. In 2014 alone, 396 survivors of human trafficking came in contact with the Maryland Human Trafficking Task Force. Of those, 381 were trafficking victims, 364 of them girls and women. The FBI Child Exploitation Task Force has identified 46 child victims of trafficking in Maryland since 2013. The Department of Juvenile Services found 78 potential victims in their facilities. And these aren't just numbers, these are children. 3 major airports, inexpensive bus transportation, train service along the East Coast, large sporting events, disposable income. Maryland has become a trafficking superhighway. Federal prosecutors have charged men like Kenneth Hart, who ran a prostitution business, supplying victims with narcotics daily, withholding their drugs if they showed any sign of disobedience. Men like Aaron Crawford, trafficking minors in Prince George's County. Since 2013, Maryland has seen 23 federal trafficking prosecutions and 94 arrests, but sex trafficking is just the beginning. Human trafficking in Maryland isn't just about trafficking anymore. It's about benefits. Older adults are being trafficked for their Social Security benefits, veterans benefits, labor, and sex. Yes, sex, and possibly body parts. Here's how it all works. They're being discharged from hospitals to a licensed home where a bed is left open. The following morning, they're moved to a bed or a basement in an unlicensed address, or they're sold to a different owner. Baltimore City Fire Lieutenant Colleen Lowe reports finding cases every few weeks. Dispatchers are now trained to spot the signs. The elderly, some of our most vulnerable, are being harvested, not mainly for their organs, but for their monthly checks. And once these checks stop coming, who knows what they do with them? Think about it. How many missing persons in Maryland have ended up as unwilling organ donors? More than 600,000 people go missing annually in the United States. Where do they all go? Maryland tried to make organ harvesting even easier. In 2012, they introduced House Bill 449, a law that would let surrogates donate organs from people in a persistent vegetative state. Not dead people, living people. People who can't speak for themselves. The kicker? PVS, or persistent vegetative state, is about 40% misdiagnosed. That's worse odds than a coin flip. Imagine being trapped in your body, aware but unable to move, while someone signs papers to harvest your kidney because they think you're a vegetable. The bill would have allowed a friend, not even a family, just a friend, to decide based on your religious, moral, or personal values. How vague is that? And how easy would that be to abuse? Yeah, they knew what they were doing when they were trying to pass that bill. But do you think it all ends with organs? Think again. Let me tell you about Doris Stauffer, a 73-year-old grandmother who struggled with Alzheimer's. When she died in 2013, her son Jim donated her body to science, hoping her brain could help unlock the mysteries of the disease. He checked the box that said no to military experiments. No explosions, no to his mother being used as a crash test dummy. I didn't even know that was a thing, but apparently it is. But Stephen Gore, who I talked about in a previous video about Chicago body harvesting, his name is very fitting, of course, Gore, but Stephen Gore and his Biological Resource Center in Arizona had other plans. And I know I just mentioned Arizona, but I'm going to bring it back to Maryland. I just want to show this is all interconnected. They sold Doris for $5,893 to the US Army. She was strapped in a chair with a detonation device underneath her, and they blew her up. The military wanted to see what happens to a human body when a vehicle hits an IED. Jim Stauffer, her son, got back 6 ounces of ashes. The ashes were derived from just his mother's hand, because that's all that was left after they blew her up. 20 bodies were secretly sold to the Pentagon. 34 people total were shipped to the military without donor permission. The bodies weren't obliterated. That would be too merciful. Instead, bones were broken, spines snapped, bodies wired to 100 biosensors flailed violently during explosions before slumping over, broken but intact. And where did this testing all happen? It happened at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, the same state with centuries of body snatching history, now the testing ground for human explosives experiments. The Army claimed they were victims of BRC's business practices, but they kept buying, body after body, grandmother after grandfather. People who thought they were helping cure cancer, Alzheimer's, heart disease, instead became data points in blast radius calculations. Tulane University's medical school sold 7 cadavers to the Army for between $25,000 and $30,000 each. Bodies they got for less than $1,000. That's a hell of a markup for turning someone's loved one into a landmine test. In 2019, a jury awarded $58 million to families whose relatives were sold for military testing. Stephen Gore pleaded guilty to running an illegal enterprise. He told the judge he was simply overwhelmed and he tried to do the right thing. The right thing? He sold a grandmother to be blown up after her family specifically said no. The body broker industry remains largely unregulated. No federal oversight, no uniform state laws, just a free market in human flesh, where your mother, father, sister, brother can be sold to the highest bidder. Anyway guys, that's going to be it for today. Let me know what you think of this one in the comment section.